Hey y'all, welcome to Knit and Chat. I'm Melissa and this is Melissa Knits for Fun. My Knit and Chat is just a small, usually 15 minutes or so episode of talking about, a specific topic. I've done measurements and I've done swatching and blocking. And today we are going to talk about how do you choose a pattern as a beginner, especially how do I choose a garment pattern as a beginner. Now you may notice and you may be thinking, we've given her feedback about sitting closer to the camera, but I'm sitting further away today and I will try to zoom in a little bit when I edit it. But I'm sitting back because I wanted to get this t-shirt in. You notice I'm not wearing a knit today. I'm wearing this t-shirt because my friend Christy, who gave it to me, has been on my mind quite a bit today. And when I went to the closet this morning and I saw this, I thought it was very appropriate to wear. I will tell you at the end of this a little story about how I wound up getting the t-shirt. And if you're not interested in that, then you can just stop before we get there. But having said that, I'm going to dive right in. This week at the yarn shop, several of the ladies talked about wanting to knit a sweater. Specifically wanting to knit a sweater for themselves versus knitting a sweater for someone else. And that they want it to be really easy to do. And they're I don't know that scared is the right word, but apprehensive about doing a garment. Just like most of us were who began, well, except for people like Haley, who her very first project was a sweater. She taught herself to knit online and decided a sweater was the first project she should do. Young people are a lot more courageous, I think, than us ladies as we get a little bit more mature and a little bit more life experience. We tend to be a little bit more cautious whenever we start new things. So the conversation has been, how do I know how to find a pattern that will be easy enough for me to do as my first garment? Well, the easiest thing to do is to find someone like me who has a lot of experience knitting and has done everything from easy to really complicated as far as garments go. I am known at my local yarn shop as Sweater Melissa. There's 3 Melissas in our group, and I am Sweater Melissa because that is what I knit. So people do come to me and ask, and I have recommendations. My favorite beginning pullover sweater pattern is Florence Miller's step-by-step, I think it's step-by-step sweater or it's step-by-step pullover. I'll put a picture of it up here. It's really, really great. She's got video tutorials for it. It's an easy to understand pattern. Some of my other recommendations, the Monday sweater by PetiteKnit, I think it's really good. The Novice sweater by PetiteKnit as well. There are several really good ones. And then if we're talking about cardigans, Florence Miller has another one called the Step-by-Step Cardigan that I think is very easy to follow. And she has a video tutorial for that one as well. Now today I want to show you, if you don't have a Sweater Melissa to go to and say, hey, what can you guide me? And can you sit next to me whenever I'm trying to knit this and help me? What do you do? How do you go out and find a pattern that would be easy enough for you to knit? There's several different ways you can do this. One is there are pattern books out there that are called Easy to Knit Sweaters, Easy to Knit Cardigans, Easy to Knit Blankets, Easy to Knit fill in the blank. You can certainly get one of those. Most libraries have pattern books like this, so if you don't want to invest in buying a book, go to the library, check it out, read through the patterns there, and see, hey, does this look easy enough for us to do, right, or for me to do? They usually rate them like beginner, intermediate, etc., etc. That's one way to do it. If you get knitting magazines, which in the US is very difficult to do unless you're willing to source from overseas. I do get the Knitter, which is a UK-based knitting magazine. And I will tell you that they are hit or miss because our post office here doesn't like to deliver them. I had to reach out. The Knitter kindly sent me, there were the first 2 or 3 months of my subscription, I didn't get any at all, and they kindly resent those to me. I received the copies now, and we're talking, I am 6 months or so into this subscription, and I think I bought 13 I really can't speak today. 13 issues. So we're into about 5 or 6 that I should have received. I'm just now getting episodes from a couple of months back, or issues, not episodes. But I'm just now getting those, so maybe other people in other parts of the country are having better success, because I do know that they have a US-based audience. I'm having trouble getting them, but if you do get them inside on the patterns, they will tell you, is this beginner, intermediate, or advanced knitting? You can find one in there that is beginner, and most knitting magazines do have a variety in there, so something for everyone. They have beginner, they have intermediate, they have advanced. And then they also, another really great thing about knitting magazines is they usually have an article in there that's to help you grow your skills. I think the knitter calls it the master class, and they have an article in there on how to do German short rows, or how to do Fair Isle color work, etc. So those are really great resources. And then for those of you who are like, yeah, I don't do those paper things, especially the younger generation, right? I don't do those paper things. What are you talking about? Everything I do is digital. There are places to go and find patterns online. There's Etsy, there's, I think it's Love to Craft is what it's called. I will link to these below. And then there's, of course, Ravelry. I use Love to Crafts for things that aren't on Ravelry. I also have a library there, so I go there to find, I have several baby knitting patterns seem to be really, really prevalent over there. There's some really, really great ones, a lot of free ones over on I think it's called Love Crafts. It's either Love Crafts or Love to Craft, I forget. As I said, I will link below. And I have a lot of free baby patterns there, so I go there to the library and look. I don't spend a lot of time looking for patterns over there. I feel like Ravelry has more patterns, and they are, in my opinion, they're easier to search for because I know how to use the advanced search button. And so I'm going to walk you through that specifically, and I will put up, because I did learn how to do this, and in fact I'm going to shift just a little bit so I allow a little bit more room over here so I can make it bigger. I am going to put a screen recording of me on my phone, so it will look a little bit different if you're using an iPad or you're using a computer, but I will do it from my phone, a screen recording of me going and searching for a pattern. I'm specifically going to search for a knitting pattern that is a pullover sweater, that is, it has a photo, and that it is marked easy. There are multiple different categories. There's, I think it says piece of cake, easy. There's there's like, I think 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's several different ones, and it's, I think, up to 5 stars. 5 star being the most difficult. I'll show you how to do that. You will notice in there, I do not choose piece of cake and easy, and the reason why is every one that I went out and looked at that were marked piece of cake only had 3 ratings. I think things are a piece of cake that a beginner would look at and say that is an advanced knitting project. So when I do score or I give feedback and I do a rating on Ravelry patterns, I try to look at it from a beginner's perspective. If I were a beginner and this was my first or second or third garment, would I find this to be an easy pattern, or would I find this that you need to be more intermediate or advanced in order to do this pattern? I will also show you, once you do go into and you have your list of patterns that are what you're looking for, and there are lots more things that you can do. I am just going to stick to those, right? It's a knitting pattern, it's a pullover, it has a photo, and it is marked easy, is rated easy. Once you do that, you can, okay, let me go back because I started a thought process and then I skipped over it. Besides those, you could also, if you wanted to, say, I am looking for a child's garment, I'm looking for a baby garment, I'm looking for an adult garment, etc. If you only have worsted weight yarn, you can choose the weight of your yarn. If you only want one color, you can choose that. There's a lot of things in there that you can choose. If you have a specific yarn, you could choose more options and choose a specific yarn that you're looking for. I'm not doing all of that. I am just focusing on those, I think it's 4 things, right? Once you do that and you see the patterns, then you can actually go into the pattern, you can go down, you can see how many ratings there are, and then you can click on that and it will tell you, out of all the ratings it's gotten, how many ratings did say this is easy. If a pattern has, let's say 1,700 ratings, and you go in there and you look at it and you're like, well, out of these 1,600 people said this was easy, it's probably an easy pattern. If it's coming up because it happened to have 10 that said it was easy, which typically is not the case with Ravelry. It's going to give you the ones that rated the highest in what you're looking for. But let's say there was a glitch and you only had 10 that said it was easy, but out of those 1,700, the majority of them said they were intermediate or advanced. As a beginner, you might not want to pick that one. I'll show you how to do all of that with my screen recording.
Hi everyone, I'm going to walk you through how to search for an easy pattern on Ravelry. We're going to start on the front page of Ravelry, and from here we are going to go to Menu, Advanced Search. This will pull up a search page and you can see where it shows Filter Results. I'm going to click on Filter Results. I am going to choose knitting as my craft. As you can see, there is also crochet, machine knitting, loom knitting. I'm going to pick the category of clothing and then scroll down and choose sweater and pullover. Then I'm going to back out of this. There are many more categories other than clothes that you can choose. You can choose availability, free, purchasing online, etc. I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to choose that yes, it does have a photo because you need to see what it looks like. You can choose attributes, age, size, fit. You could choose the weight of the yarn, how much yardage you have, etc., how many colors. But I'm going to go down here. The only other thing I care about for this tutorial is the difficulty. I'm going to choose easy. In the video, I said there were 5 stars, but apparently there are more than that. As you can see, there's all the way up to 10, which is impossible. And from here, I'm going to show you how you get into your more search options. And you see right down here at the bottom, it says more search options. You click on that and it will give you more search options. This is where you could put what your gauge is, if you have a pattern name or a suggested yarn name, etc. I'm going to be done with mine, and I'm going to just scroll down and show you a couple of the patterns. You can see the first one that comes up is the step-by-step sweater that I talked about by Florence Miller. And if I go into here, there's a lot of information in here that she gives you about gauge, what yarn she used, where you can get it. This is a free Ravelry download. It tells you the sizes and gives you some notes. You can see here there is an average rating difficulty from 2,289 ratings. That's a lot of ratings, right? So you go in and you click on ratings and it gives you some statistics. You see here your overall ratings, the majority of them loved it. Clarity ratings, the majority of people said it was very clear. And then you can see difficulty ratings here. You can see that the majority, out of those 2,200, 1,183 people said that this was an easy pattern. That typically means that it is going to fit into that easy category. I'm going to close these statistics, and then I'm going to show you this on one more pattern, which is the Flax Worsted by Tin Can Knits. And you go down, you see there's a whole lot of information in here. And then again, they've got 6,500 ratings. And you see that 2,617 said it was easy. Almost an equal number said that it was, not quite as easy, and then a lot said that it was very easy as well. All right, and that concludes how to use the Ravelry search.
Just know that there are ways to go out there and look for the pattern that you want. And then once you have that whole list, then you can make an informed decision about which one do I like the best, which one do I think that I could knit the best, because then those patterns will have more information within them about what yarn was used, what's the recommended gauge, what's the needle size, what, etc., etc. And then you can do a gauge swatch, see if you meet gauge, see if you need to move your needle size around. Is this something that you're like, oh yeah, the yarn is working up like I wanted it to, this is what I want to do. You can choose, obviously, if you have the yarn, you can choose a pattern based on your yarn. If I were a beginner and starting out, I would most likely go and find that pattern that I want to knit and then get the yarn size for that pattern. So I would probably pick my pattern first, and then I would buy the yarn. As someone who's been knitting for a long time, for 10 years, and has a quite extensive stash, that is not how I pick my patterns usually. I have a ton of yarn, and so I go and pick patterns that I like, and then I go match it up with the yarn I already have. Sometimes that does result in me having to buy yarn because I don't have what I'm looking for. But those times are getting fewer and fewer and farther and farther between. As I grow my stash, however, if I'm buying a pattern, or if I'm buying yarn, I'm looking for a pattern to go with that yarn. I may repurpose the yarn later, but I need to have a plan for it before it goes in my stash now. All right, I have pretty much told you how to go and find a pattern that is easy to knit. Giving you, or at least I haven't told you, right? I hate that word. I hate I told you to go do this, unless you're my child. Those words typically don't come out of my mouth. I have given you some recommendations and some suggestions. So that's the end of the content that you'll find really useful if you are one of the people who are in the beginning of their journey. Even if you're not in the beginning of your journey as a knitter, you're in the beginning of the journey as a garment knitter. Those are some really good suggestions, right, to go and figure out, how do I know that this is easy? So now I am going to pivot, and I'm going to talk about this t-shirt a little bit. I moved, as I shared, about 10 years ago, I moved to Massachusetts, and I took my very first contracting job ever. Terrified. I was so scared. I have a problem sometimes with self-talk about, I wouldn't be good enough. Nobody's going to like me. That old song, nobody loves me, everybody hates me, I'm going to go eat some worms. Well, that is me a lot of the times when I put myself in a new situation. Not that you would ever know that, because I present myself as very outgoing, very confident, very everything. Internally, I am not that person. I am a little bit shy. I am very unconfident and feel like that nobody's going to like me. So I get up to Massachusetts, I'm freaking out, my blood sugar is going out of control because stress is a major, it is a major thing with my blood sugar. My blood sugar will be out of control no matter what I'm eating because of the level of stress I'm under. I was terrified. I got there, and on my first day at my new client, I walk in, I go into this team, and in walks this woman who actually smiles at me. And not only says, hey, welcome, and welcome to the team. She says, hey, welcome to the team. Where are you from? How are you doing as far as integrating into the community? She was my first friend in Massachusetts. She made me feel welcome. She's the first person who took me to lunch. And she wound up being my weekly lunch person. She wound up being a very good friend of mine. Her name was Christy Perry, and she had what every year At Thanksgiving, she had a Perry pie party. She was from Utah. She was also the first Mormon friend I ever had. She was from Utah. She was a Mormon. And her family had this tradition of doing this Perry pie party where people would bring a pie and share it with the people that came. So I, of course, had to take a southern pecan pie, but you had every kind of pie there that you can imagine. And she lived in this little one-bedroom apartment. I'm telling you, people were spilling out in the halls. People were crammed into this apartment like, I don't know, like sardines. We were in there. I met some really, really nice people. We had people from work. She had people from her church. She had people that lived in her building. There were people from every part of her life in that room sharing their pies. And there was every kind of pie that you can imagine. Savory pies, sweet pies, southern pies, more traditional English pies, more traditional New England pies, etc., etc. I had more pies that night than I probably had before or since then. And it was a really great time. She was the kind of person that saw you. And she was the kind of person who made you feel welcome. And she found joy in every part of her life. As you can probably tell, I am speaking past tense. Christy passed away last year. Christy was 50 years old. It was very unexpected, and we all reeled in shock. I wore this to the yarn shop the day that I found out, because it was my little hug from Christy. And how I wound up with this was, as I said, Christy was my friend. And so Christy knew when I started knitting and how excited I was to finally knit. And she pointed me to the group. We had a knitting group at the company that we both were at. Christy was an employee, I was a consultant. And I was lucky enough to be able to get involved in that on my lunch hour, and I knitted my very first hat, a little preemie hat, and we donated it. And so she was really supportive of my knitting. And one day I showed up at work, and I'll put a picture, because I did take a picture. One day I showed up at work, and there was this little square on my desk, and it was this t-shirt. I felt so seen and so supported. And so today, as I said, she's been on my mind. I've been thinking a lot about her and how she found joy in life in every little part, and that she was such a big personality. Her 50th birthday party, apparently there were 250 people that came. I promise you, my 50th birthday, there was nowhere near that many people. I think that I didn't even have a party. I think that, you know, maybe 50 people told me happy birthday. But she was just such a big personality and such a great, great person that today, being on my mind, I just wanted to share her with everybody and let her live on after her passing. A little bit through me. She's living on a lot through other people. But if you've stayed with me this long, thank you so much. And I will see you in a few days for my regular, longer episode. Have a great week.